He didn't just love me, he tamed me. And I was compelled to follow his every move.
I no longer need your tongue. I no longer need your tongue.
Before I start this story, please hit that subscribe button, like this video, and turn on notifications. Leave a comment below if you've ever had to fight for what's yours. Your support goes a long way in helping me create this content. Let's dive into what really happened. My name is Betty, and I'm 58 years old. I have spent my whole life in the dust and dry heat of West Texas, on the same small ranch. Marked by rusted barbed wire and the scent of hickory smoke drifting from my old smokehouse. For 3 generations, the women in my family have tended a single iron pot of barbecue sauce we call the mother sauce. It has never been emptied, only replenished. It has simmered for more than a century, thick with history and memory. After my husband passed, it became my purpose and my closest companion. I believed I would spend the rest of my days stirring that ancient pot, listening to crickets and watching the sun bleed across the plains. Everything changed on a quiet Tuesday. A sleek black limousine rolled down my gravel driveway, kicking up a cloud of dust that coated my porch and my hydrangeas. Out stepped Julian, a man whose face I'd seen on every food magazine. He was the CEO of a giant culinary tech empire in New York. His tailored Italian suit looked ridiculous against my dirt yard and rusted pickup, but when he approached me, his humility surprised me. "Betty," he said, in a smooth, warm voice, "I've traveled thousands of miles to taste the legend." Suspicious but curious, I led him to the smokehouse. I dipped a wooden spoon into the dark sauce and offered him a taste. I watched his eyes the way I always do when sharing something sacred. As soon as it touched his tongue, his expression shattered. The man fell to his knees on the dirt floor, tears streaming down his face. "My God," he whispered. "This isn't food. This is history. Art. The soul of America." Seeing someone like him break down over my family's recipe softened something in me. We sat on the porch for hours as the sun sank behind the hills, drinking iced tea while he spoke about a future I had never imagined. "Betty, you have so much life left," he insisted, gently holding my calloused hands. "Keeping this miracle hidden in Texas? It's a sin. Come with me to New York. I'll build the Betty Heritage Center in Manhattan. Your name, your family immortalized." His words shook me. I had always feared that when I died, the recipe and everything my grandmother taught me would disappear. His offer sounded like salvation, a chance for my legacy to live beyond the ranch. I looked at the ancient starter jar, the seed of every batch of sauce we had ever made, and something inside me shifted. I packed my bags that night, wrapped the heavy ceramic jar like a fragile infant, and boarded a plane with Julian. I believed I was stepping into a bright new life. But I didn't know the truth yet. I wasn't flying toward a miracle. I was flying straight into the devil's hands. New York City was a monster of glass and steel, screaming with noise and lights, so different from the vast, quiet open skies of Texas. Julian whisked me away from the airport in a helicopter to his headquarters, a skyscraper that pierced the clouds like a needle. "This is your new home, Betty," he announced, opening the doors to a penthouse that looked more like a futuristic laboratory than a living space. It was breathtaking, yes, but it was cold. The walls were floor-to-ceiling glass, offering a view that made me dizzy. The furniture was sharp and uncomfortable, and the air was filtered to a sterile chill that made me shiver. "We need a controlled environment to preserve the integrity of the sauce," he explained, his smile tight. It sounded reasonable at the time. He showed me to a state-of-the-art kitchen, filled with chrome gadgets and digital screens I didn't know how to use, and told me this was where we would change the culinary world forever. However, the restrictions on my freedom began almost immediately. Before I could even unpack my few belongings, Julian asked for my phone. "Corporate espionage is a real threat, Betty. Competitors would kill for your secret. We need to secure all communications to protect your legacy." He handed me a sleek, heavy tablet instead. "Use this. It's encrypted and secure." I didn't understand the technology, so I agreed, handing over my old flip phone. But when I tried to call my granddaughter Sarah later that night to tell her I arrived safely, the tablet wouldn't connect. It only allowed calls to Julian and his research team. I felt a sudden, sharp pang of isolation, but I pushed it down. Julian was a billionaire genius. Surely he knew best how to handle these things. Days turned into weeks, and the penthouse began to feel less like a luxury suite and more like a high-end prison. I wasn't allowed to leave the building. "The city is dangerous for a woman alone," Julian would say with a concerned frown, treating me as if I were fragile, though at 58. I was still strong enough to haul firewood and fix fences. "Whatever you need, my staff will bring it. You just focus on the sauce." I would stand by the glass wall, pressing my hand against the cold surface, looking down at the people walking in Central Park like tiny ants. I was so close to them, yet completely cut off. Surveillance cameras blinked in every corner of the apartment, their red lights watching my every move, day and night. Even in the bathroom, I felt eyes on me. Yet, Julian was so charming. He would come in every evening, tasting the batches I brewed, praising my genius, and making me feel indispensable. I was working myself to the bone, documenting every nuance of the fermentation process for him, unaware that I was digging my own grave with every recipe I wrote down. About a month into my stay, just as I was starting to feel the heavy weight of homesickness, Julian started expressing extreme concern for my health. "Betty, you look pale. The pollution in New York is terrible compared to your clean Texas air," he said one morning, his brow furrowed with deep worry. "My private medical team has prepared a special regimen of vitamins and herbal teas to boost your immune system and help you adapt. You must take them for the sake of the project." Every morning and evening, he personally brought me a silver tray with colorful pills and a cup of pungent, bitter tea that smelled faintly of almonds. Touched by his kindness and dedication to my well-being, I swallowed every pill and drained every cup without question. He was the greatest chef in the world. If he said it was good for me, it must be. The change was subtle at first, creeping up on me like a shadow. I would wake up in the morning with a strange metallic taste in my mouth, like I had been sucking on a penny all night. Then, my morning coffee started to taste watery and bland. I thought maybe the beans were stale or the water filter was broken. But soon, the symptoms escalated rapidly. I was cooking a stew for myself one evening, and no matter how much salt, pepper, and spices I added, it tasted like nothing. It was just hot texture in my mouth. Panic, cold and sharp, seized my chest. For a chef, for a sauce master, Taste is not just a sense, it is our soul. It is our livelihood. It is how we connect with the world. If I couldn't taste, I was nothing. I was hollow. I ran to Julian, tears streaming down my face, shaking with fear. Julian, something is wrong. I can't taste the sauce. My tongue. It's dead. I can't feel the spices. I expected him to be horrified, to call a doctor immediately. Instead, he looked at me with a pity that now chills my blood. He sighed deeply and patted my shoulder with a condescending gentleness. "Oh, Betty, I was afraid of this. It can happen to women your age when they undergo extreme stress and environmental changes. Your taste buds are failing naturally." He held my face in his hands, his touch lingering a bit too long, staring into my eyes. "Don't worry. You don't need to taste. I will be your tongue. You have the knowledge, I have the senses. We are a perfect team." I collapsed into his arms, sobbing, grateful that he wasn't abandoning me in my time of need. I felt broken, useless, a relic of the past. I became completely dependent on him, trusting his judgment on the flavor of my own creation. I didn't know then that the vitamins he was feeding me were powerful neuroinhibitors designed to sever the connection between my tongue and my brain. The illusion of my partnership with Julian shattered on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. My granddaughter, Sarah, worried about my silence, had flown all the way from Texas to surprise me. I happened to be looking out the window when I saw a small figure arguing with the doorman downstairs. My heart leapt. It was Sarah. I ran to the intercom to buzz her in, but Julian intercepted me, grabbing my wrist. "Who is that?" I asked, pulling away. Julian checked the monitor and his face went cold, his eyes devoid of warmth. "Just a fan. Or a spy. Ignore it." I watched in horror as Sarah was physically pushed away by security. That was the moment the spell broke. If he truly cared for me, why would he keep my own flesh and blood away? Why would he isolate me from the only family I had left? That night, Julian was hosting a lavish gala for his investors. The moment his private elevator descended, I made my move. I needed answers, and I knew where to find them. I crept down the hallway to his private office, a room I was strictly forbidden to enter. The door was locked with a keypad. My hands shook violently. I remembered seeing him type in a code once. It was the date of his first Michelin star. I punched in the numbers. Beep. The light turned green. I slipped inside, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, terrified of being caught. The office was a shrine to his ego, filled with awards and photos of himself. I sat at his computer and frantically searched for my name. A folder titled Project Text Copy appeared. I clicked it, and my world fell apart. On the screen were complex chemical formulas, a breakdown of my mother sauce. He wasn't trying to preserve it, he was trying to replicate it synthetically in a lab so he could mass produce it without me. But the true horror was in the subfolder labeled Subject Betty. I read the medical logs. Administered dose 50 mg neuroblocker. Status 90% taste deprivation achieved. Subject is compliant and unaware. I clamped a hand over my mouth to stop a scream. He had drugged me. He had deliberately blinded my senses so he could swap my real sauce with his chemical fake, and I wouldn't be able to tell the difference. The final note read, "Once the chemical formula is perfected, the subject will be transferred to a state mental facility." Asset is expendable. I wasn't a partner. I was a lab rat. And I was scheduled for disposal. I wanted to burn the building down. I wanted to scream until my throat bled. But I knew that if I showed any sign of knowing the truth, I would never leave this tower alive. He had security everywhere. I had to play the game, a game of life and death. I wiped my tears, smoothed my apron, and went back to my room. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, a 58-year-old woman with lines on her face. Yes, but a Texas woman. We're made of tougher stuff than this. You are not a victim, Betty, I whispered to my reflection. You are a fighter. You survived droughts and storms, you will survive him. The next morning, Julian entered with his usual fake smile and the tray of poison. Time for your vitamins, Betty. You need your strength. I smiled back, the sweetest, most grandmotherly smile I could muster. Thank you, Julian. You take such good care of me. I popped the pills into my mouth but tucked them deep under my tongue. I drank the tea, but the moment he turned to check his phone, I spit the liquid into the soil of his potted orchid. As soon as he left the room, I rushed to the bathroom and spat the dissolving pills into the toilet, flushing them away. I did this for 5 days, living in constant fear that he would catch me. Slowly, agonizingly, the fog began to lift. On the 3rd day, the toothpaste burned my tongue, a sensation I welcomed like an old friend. On the 4th day, I could taste the salt in my tears. By the 5th day, my senses were sharper than ever. That afternoon, Julian brought me a bowl of brown sludge. I think we've finally perfected the batch, Betty. Try it. It was his chemical fake. I tasted it. It was vile, metallic, overly sweet, with a chemical aftertaste that burned my throat. It tasted like betrayal. But I closed my eyes and let out a sigh of ecstasy. Oh, Julian. This is it. It's better than the original. You've done it. Julian's eyes lit up with greed and triumph. Excellent. Then we are ready for the launch. He believed he had won. He thought I was a senile, taste-blind old woman. He didn't know that the tiger had woken up, and she was ready to bite. The day of the miracle sauce launch arrived. Julian was busy preparing for the global livestream event that evening, leaving the Penthouse security lighter than usual. This was my only chance. I had managed to hack into the internal messaging system using the password I stole from his office and sent a cryptic message to Sarah, who was still in the city, staying at a hostel and refusing to leave without me. Loading Dock B. 9 a.m. Bring help. I went to the climate-controlled storage room where my original jar of mother sauce was kept. It was heavy, weighing nearly 40 pounds, filled with the heritage of my ancestors. I wrapped it in my thickest sweaters and placed it in a laundry bag. My arms trembled under the weight, but adrenaline surged through my veins, giving me strength I didn't know I had. I wasn't leaving without my family's soul. I made my way to the service elevator, using a keycard I had swiped from a cleaning lady, praying that no one would stop me. When I reached the basement loading dock, the smell hit me: rotting food and stale garbage. It was the most beautiful smell in the world because it meant there was a way out. I spotted a catering truck that was removing waste from the building. I saw Sarah standing near the driver, arguing distractedly to create a diversion. Taking a deep breath, I climbed into the back of the truck, burying myself and the jar under piles of dirty tablecloths and bags of trash. I held my breath as the truck engine roared to life. We stopped at the security gate. "Check the back," a guard's voice boomed. My heart stopped. I clutched the jar to my chest, praying. The guard shone a flashlight in. The beam swept over the trash bags, missing my foot by an inch. "Clear. Go ahead." As the truck lurched forward and hit the potholes of the New York streets, I didn't care about the smell or the filth. I was free. And I had the sauce. Julian's launch party was the event of the year. The ballroom was filled with celebrities, food critics, and cameras broadcasting to millions. I watched from the wings, cleaned up but wearing my denim jacket and cowboy boots. I wasn't going to hide anymore. Julian stood on stage, bathed in a spotlight, holding a bottle of his chemical sludge. "This sauce represents the future," he declared to the adoring crowd. Betty, the original creator, sadly could not be here due to her declining mental health, but she has passed the torch to me. That was my cue. I walked onto the stage, the heavy jar in my arms. The crowd gasped, and whispers rippled through the room. Julian turned pale, his confident smile faltering. "Betty? What are you doing here? You should be resting." I ignored him and walked straight to the microphone. "He is lying." My voice didn't shake, it boomed with the rage of a woman scorned. "He didn't improve my sauce. He stole it. He drugged me to steal my taste, and he tried to replace 100 years of history with a chemical fake." Chaos erupted. Julian signaled for security, but the cameras were rolling, and the world was watching. "If you have nothing to hide, Julian," I challenged, staring him down, "then let's do a blind taste test. Right now. Your sauce versus mine." The audience began to chant, "Taste it. Taste it." He had no choice. He would look guilty if he refused. 2 bowls were set up. The judges, the toughest food critics in the city, stepped forward. They tasted Julian's sauce first. I watched their faces scrunch up in confusion. "It lacks depth," one whispered into his mic. "There's a strange, metallic finish." Then, I opened my jar. The aroma of hickory, molasses, and love filled the room instantly. They dipped their spoons. Silence fell over the ballroom. Then, the head judge closed his eyes and smiled. "This," he said, his voice trembling, "tastes like memory. It tastes like truth." The verdict was unanimous. As the crowd erupted in cheers, I signaled Sarah to project the stolen files and medical records onto the giant screen behind us. Julian's fraud was exposed in 4K resolution. He tried to run off stage, but the police were already waiting. The fallout was swift and brutal. Julian was arrested for fraud, assault, and corporate theft. His empire crumbled overnight, his investors fled, and his name became a joke in the culinary world. But for me, the victory wasn't about his destruction, it was about my reclamation. I had reclaimed my name, my taste, and my life. I sued him for everything he had. With the settlement money, I didn't go back to the ranch to hide. I decided to make a statement. I bought a prime location in downtown Manhattan, right in the shadow of Julian's former tower, and opened Betty's Real Pit. There are no white tablecloths, no reservations, and no chemical preservatives. Just wooden benches, butcher paper, and the smell of real smoke. Today, the line wraps around the block. Bankers in suits sit next to construction workers, all messy with my ribs and brisket. I see young chefs coming in, not to learn how to use liquid nitrogen, but to learn how to be patient with a fire. I tell them what I learned the hard way: you can't fake flavor, and you can't fast-track a legacy. Good food comes from an honest heart. Sometimes, I stand by the window of my kitchen and look at the jar, now displayed in a bulletproof case. I survived the trap. I kept my senses. And most importantly, I kept my integrity. I am 58 years old, and I'm just getting started. I'm not just a grandma from Texas, I'm the woman who took down a giant with a wooden spoon. So, to everyone listening, if someone tries to tell you that your value is obsolete, or that you need to change to fit their mold, you tell them to take a hike. Your authenticity is your superpower. Don't ever let them take your taste for life. Thank you for listening to my story. If you want to keep up with these stories, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Also, please show your support by giving this video a like. Your click goes a long way and helps me continue making content.